Hello, everybody. My name's Joel Filderman, and welcome to the Dog Trainers Connection. I am not a dog trainer, but these other people you see here are. We get together, we discuss a topic, come up with some thoughts, some ideas, and sometimes some answers, but always have an interesting discussion. And for today's topic, well, Steve actually sent something to Bonnie recently about timing. And what I wanted to discuss today was uh, the importance of timing and what do you do with somebody like me, who, as I say at the beginning of this video, is not a dog trainer. And my timing, I work on it, but it's not that good. So does that mean that I'm not training the dog right, or does that mean that I'm not getting the results that I want from training, and whatever else you want to talk about timing. And does anybody want to start today? Speaking of timing,
Okay,
or go ahead, Helen.
I will start. Yeah, I think timing is great, is critical for rapid results, in my opinion. Um, when I'm working with clients, every time it's the same thing. Oh, the dog does so well with you. It's mostly timing.
Mm-hmm.
And teaching some clients, they're pretty good with their timing. Others need a little work. So, what I try to do with clients is teach them and the dog right away. Start with a bridge, either a clicker or just a word, good, yes, whatever you want to use, to help with their timing. And then I also have to teach the clients um, when to click, when to say the word. There's games we practice for clicker skills, or even just saying good, um, bouncing a ball, and you want to
Mm-hmm.
time, or just dropping a ball and you want to time your click,
Hmm.
or saying good the moment the ball hits the ground or wherever you're dropping it from. We work on click treat, click treat. So we'll do some of that with just transferring from one bowl to another, just practicing these things for clients who are really interested in that.
Okay.
For the ones that don't want to do all that just to train their dog, and there's plenty of them. They're not dog trainers. They don't want to be dog trainers.
Sure.
Okay, fine. We just try to focus on just when you say your marker word, like good. You
Okay.
want to get that part right because that's the bridge. And if you have to fumble for a treat, it's okay as long as you get the timing of the marker correct, and you've taught the dog the marker, you're good to go. So, does it slow down the training process? A little bit, but the bridge works really well. And that's really important because not everyone can be rapid with the response. So as long
Mm-hmm.
as you get the bridge in there, I think it works really well.
Okay.
And I just want to jump in, and I'm probably not going to state this totally clearly, but I know Gary Wilkes, one of the original developers of clicker training, he doesn't stress giving the reward right after. If you say good or
Right after the
click,
marker word is
right
that.
after the
Okay.
marker, correct.
Yeah,
That it can be delayed, that you can wait, you can go get the treat, come back and give it to the dog. So I think that's interesting too, because I know when I was trained by someone who worked directly with Karen Pryor back in the day, it was click, treat coming in, so that they had that association with what they were doing, the click, and then the treat. But that's interesting.
Okay.
well,
And Gary is one of the ones who actually developed it.
right.
What
Well,
were you going to say, Helen? Go
in
ahead.
in practice, the whole point of the bridge, the click or saying good, is so that you don't have to deliver a treat with immediacy. It bridges the gap between the time that the behavior occurred and the reward, so that the dog still can associate the reward, which is the consequence for the behavior.
Hmm.
But you have to teach that click means treat or good means treat. You have to teach the bridge. And that's where you need some immediacy, at least in my opinion. You initially click, treat, click, treat, click, treat. I can do that outside of a training exercise.
Hmm.
So it's Pavlov's dog, click, treat, so that when the dog hears click, they think treat. And then I can start using the click while training. Yes.
Steve, just before you jump in, what about if you say good and you really mean it and you've got that connection with your dog, that's going to go a long way too.
Well, you can use,
And you might not need the treat because the dog is doing it for you, is responding to you. So there's that piece too, that all the other might be mechanical, but what's your relationship with your dog?
I,
Just
I don't,
throwing that in.
I know. I don't personally subscribe to that. Good doesn't get it done.
Hmm. What were you going to say, Steve?
Well, I'm going to go to the Bob Bailey story where he talks about working with canine companions for independence, and they were doing the heel, and the dogs kept coming around, and they'd click the dog when the dog was in the right spot, but then the dog would take a step forward because that's where they fed it,
Hmm.
step forward. So they marked it when the dog was in the correct position. So Dr. Bailey said they didn't understand because the writing suggests that the marker tells the story, but that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so since the dog got fed for a step forward, he had to take 2 weeks of feeding the dogs in the small of his back after the click and then reshape it to where the dog would end up in the right spot. So I guess, we can get what we would call experts to say both, but they complain to
Mhm.
but Dr. Bailey, we're told that since the click marks the appropriateness of the behavior, that's the end of, because that's what they call it, right? The click ends the behavior. Yeah, well, that's not true. Somehow that's not true because the food ended up being the end of the behavior, which was offered in the wrong position, and that's where the dogs ended up. So, I think everything counts. I mean, just to go to Bonnie's thing, if you have the kind of dog and the kind of relationship where it, the dog really derives some kind of real, like, tangible in the to the dog reward for that.
Mhm.
I think that there are less of those dogs and more of the dogs that say, let's see, you fed me 50 times for a recall, and on the 51st recall, you didn't reward me. So on the 52nd recall, there's no dog showing up.
Mm-hmm.
There are those dogs too, where it's like you're only as good as the last, like, stellar reward.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Sure.
you stop that, they stop doing. And just this week, I read somebody said, when somebody complains to you about their dog and, like, lack of motivation and response, ask them the last time they paid for it. Ask them the last time they paid. Because, all our clients at some point,
When you say paid, you mean gave the dog something? Is
yeah.
that okay? Yeah.
Mean,
I
mean,
figured that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure.
so, the thing is that everybody asks, I mean, at least in my world, how long do I got to keep giving the dog the food? Once he
Mm-hmm.
knows it, isn't he gonna just do it? And I'm like, no, same as just like your job, but if they stop paying you, you're gonna stop doing it, and that's all there
Mm.
is to it. So, look, there are generous dogs. They know when they do know it, they're happy to respond and give it to you just because you got that thing and they're a certain way and you're a certain way. And but as teachers, we don't know what we're walking into. You don't really know the relationship between your client and their dog. And even if it seems great, it could be great from the dog's perspective. It gets pillow space on the bed. The dog thinks life is great. But when you ask it to do something, or most important, will the dog respond when it's in drive, not in the kitchen, when it's chasing a squirrel, when it's busy, trained, if you're wearing your big boy pants, trained is that the dog responds when it's in drive.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, we might as well
Mhm.
be dog owners, not dog trainers, right? Because that's when it counts. That's when people need it. And if it doesn't happen then, it's not happening. You know, that's basically the way I kind of see it. So whatever it takes to get that to happen, that's dog training. If your client doesn't need that, great. We train to their needs, not our own. But as a professional, I think if we're looking to try to strive for what makes us good at it, I think that's a marker for what makes us good. Can you get the dog trained when it's in drive? And I'm not saying there's 100% anything, but I think as a goal, that should be, I think, a professional's goal.
Mm-hmm.
Training them in the kitchen and feeling good about it.
Okay.
And then, and that means you get into that murky waters that nobody wants to talk about of aversive consequences that are aversive
Well,
for what the
that
dog's
was
doing.
that was going to be part of my question, is that, we talk about timing, and for the most part you talk about timing from positive standpoint, from treat and etc. Does timing matter if you're not doing that click treat? Jeff, you're nodding your head, so go right ahead.
If anyone does anything right with their dogs, it's got to be timing.
Okay.
I tell all my clients, and I subscribe to, if it's not right now, it's wrong. And that's just me. And that goes with, rewards or correction.
Uh-huh.
Because I mean, years ago when I first started learning about training in the 90s, it was like, well, you have 10 seconds to reward behavior. And I read that stuff now. I'm like, 10 seconds?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what dogs you work with. But the dogs I work with, they're on to 64 other things in the first
Right.
5 seconds after I missed a mark.
Yeah.
Capturing or marking a behavior has to happen when the behavior is occurring, if we're teaching them something, right? For instance, when I'm teaching sitting down, I don't even say sitting down until I get 20 or 30 reps in. I shape the behavior, pair it with a treat, right? After 30 or so reps, the dog starts offering the behavior, then I assign a word to it, and we go on from there. To me, that helps me achieve reliability for that behavior a lot faster.
Okay.
With minimal distractions, like Steve alluded to. I mean, distraction work, it literally is a completely different monster.
Right.
Because it is so true. What happens in your living room and kitchen is not what happens even in your own backyard.
Yeah.
Right. But timing, it's very important. Think about it. You can be working with a puppy, right? And this is for people who use correction. I happen to be one of them. If I'm not correcting timely, I'm damaging my relationship with that dog. It's really simple, because if the dog is jumping and I give it an off command, or it's doing something and I give it some kind of verbal, correction, no, off, leave it, right? Well, if I miss that and the dog is shifted to something positive, now the dog's like, whoa, what the hell's going on here? You were just giving me treats for a half hour. Now you're yelling at me for doing the behavior you were rewarding, right? Because our timing's off. That's why I use off as, when I talk about the stuff, off is like the best example, because you can literally have your correction, which technically off is a correction to me, right? Because I mean, off is a very invasive behavior. And when I give an off cue, it sounds like no, right? That's just my approach.
Sure.
Because I just don't believe physically escalating behavior should be tolerated. And jumping is certainly one of those. So you can have a really stern, firm off. As soon as all 4 paws hit the ground, good girl, right? And that contrast with your vocal cues and the timing of the off correction with the verbal praise, it gets you where you need to go like that. Does it stop jumping? Not right away, but it's a clear form of communication as far as I'm concerned. And, so I tell all my clients, if it's not right now, it's wrong. I mean, the old housebreaking thing, right? John Doe finds poop when he comes home and he calls his dog over and he shoves the dog's nose in, the old school stupid. And I'm like, people tell me, and I'm like, all right, so let's break it down. So you gave your dog a come command, you grabbed it by the collar, you shoved its face in shit, and then you yelled at it, right? Yeah, that's how he's going to learn. What you just taught your dog is that coming to you is not
will get his face shoved in shit.
You're probably going to have a hand shy / head shy dog. And if the dog is really, really smart, he's going to learn that you don't like shit. That's all you accomplished,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, timing is extremely important. Again, even when I teach my students that one of the most important things you can do is have good timing, because if you're not capturing a behavior, you're missing it. It's really
Hmm.
that simple. You're either capturing the behavior or you're not. There is no gray area. Like humans, we have a lot of gray areas because we're insane, right? Dogs don't. they, they learn so quickly. And plus, then with treats and stuff, I'm a big believer in verbal and physical praise as well, because I like to wean dogs off of treats as soon as possible. But I work with pitties, so like they're one of the easiest breeds to train, especially with physical affection. Like you touch a pitty, they're like, oh my god, So I try to wean them off. But the bottom line for anyone watching, whether it's a dog owner or a new dog trainer,
Yeah.
you use treats until you don't need treats. Who cares? Who cares? It's like
Hmm.
same thing with a handling tool. If you need a handling tool to enrich a dog's life or empower a handler, use it until you don't need it, right? But your objective is to get past that where the dog is working for you.
Mhm.
Right?
Hmm.
So I don't know if that may. I guess I'll shut up.
No, it's okay.
And, I don't know how this fits in, and I guess it's just talking about different ways we train things, because I've trained clients with the up and off as a game. Like up, they jump on the bed, they get rewarded. Off, come down, so that off is not that said, like cut it out kind of off. Like you were saying, Jeff, it's just a different way of approaching it. But then that's also with a client who was into training and said, oh, how can I get my dog off the bed? And I go, okay, let's try this. Up, good girl. Off, good. So and the timing of rewarding when their feet hit the floor.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have a
So
YouTube video, what you just described on how to teach the off command. I actually I call them up on my ottoman, and I start with luring first because I like to
right,
lure
that's
them
what I
off.
right, exactly,
Um, you know,
luring.
and that's just me. I allow, if someone allows their dog on the furniture. If they don't, then
Mm-hmm.
your off we might have a different approach. And
Hmm.
incidentally, all the stuff we're talking about for anyone watching this, I mean, these are generalizations.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule. I mean, we can do a gazillion things wrong, but we just get that dog where if we're off a little bit, they still learn and they're just good dogs and they just get it. Like, we get those dogs. And then there's some where we really have to be precise, but in a general sense, what Bonnie was just talking about, that's my one YouTube video on how to teach the off is exactly like that, is
Mm.
teaching the up behavior, like calling them up, but letting them understand what off means. So
And
Yeah.
does the precision always work? Does that precision timing always work?
always
Okay.
timing, always. Now think about the word works.
Hmm.
Okay. It works for the dog too, right? Our timing might be off, but the dog might be exhibiting a behavior that we don't want, but it works for the dog. So
Case
therefore,
in point.
I'm good with all of this.
Okay.
Steve Diller approves this message.
Well, listen, I once trained a dog. This guy was like bitched and bitched. Oh, the dog jumps, don't want it to jump, don't want it to jump. And I worked like the devil to like keep the dog's feet on the ground. And then he comes back to me like, I don't know, a couple months later, and he's like, I'm going to be doing some frisbee with this dog. And I need the dog to like hop up into my arms. And I'm like, we just spent 6 months teaching the dog how to put his feet up, right? I had to lay on the ground and he had to put like chicken
Enough.
franks on my
Good
back
quiet.
in order to get this dog to just step up onto my back. He even brought me a rug. He brought me a rug to lay. They felt bad that I was laying on the concrete floor, so the man brought a rug to the sessions so I could lay on the rug and then get the dog to walk on my back. And then I got into the horse position, and but I killed myself for the no jump, only to then be asked to like turn that around. So think of a dog thinking these people are insane.
Mm.
What's wrong with them?
Yeah.
Schizophrenic. I mean, they don't know what they want. It's like, we do this to dogs all the time. But
Yeah.
listen, we all will agree, timing is like a super critical thing. When they teach you how to make leash corrections, right? that chain, if you're using a chain and you're using it well, it is tight for a millisecond on the neck.
Mm-hmm.
When the behavior is wrong, during the inappropriate, and this minute, if you make a nice correction, you have fixed it. That means the chain needs to be loose like that. And if it's not, you're choking the dog, right?
Mm.
And the dog couldn't possibly understand why you'd be choking him out. So the problem that most trainers have with chain collars is the fact that they don't either can't teach the client to use them well, and the dogs are hacking on a chain collar, which makes everybody hate the chain. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you use the chain right, no harm, no foul. It's just a moment, and it's the same moment as the click, right? If you're going that way, but if you miss it, you missed it. And like Jeff says, if you're not right, you're wrong. That's a good way of putting it.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it's any training tool if you really think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I've given the dog a leash pop on a harness. If it's fast, it's effective. It's it's when these corrections are overly applied for extended periods of time, in addition to poor timing, that you're going to get erratic results.
And how do you keep your clients from doing that? How do you keep your clients from over correcting, or the bad timing makes it worse?
Well, it depends on the dog and the client as far as how we approach corrections, because it's not for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like one dog might work for a milk bone, another dog might need beef jerky, right?
Right. Sure.
So it is an individual situational type of thing, but depending on whatever tool they're using, that's where mechanical skills come into play. And like Helen alluded to earlier, where a lot of times clients will say, well, gosh, the dog walks so much better for you.
Right.
And we're not even like manipulating them that much, but it's you have to tread carefully when using corrections with certain people.
Sure.
Taking the humans, this is going to sound a little weird, but I take the humans' personality into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the dominant figure of the household,
Right. Sure.
where the dominant figure of the household might be like, yo, Bob, you need to bring it down a little bit, and sometimes it could be, maybe an anxious handler can get very jerky, right?
Right.
And again, it's all about communication, not necessarily, because I mean, at face value, whether we're marking with positive reinforcement or positive punishment, it's all about communication.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have an overly dominant, for lack of a better word, handler that is using all strength and brawn, which is it's rarely effective, right? It's more about speed and timing. Or you could have the anxious passive handler that is either communicating with poor timing, or they're very jerky in their approach. So it's situational, I think.
Okay.
It's a dance. Not everybody can dance.
Right. And
Right?
that's one of the things I was thinking about was rhythm.
You got two left feet. What
Yep.
are you going to do? Right. But
And
what about the remote? Just to throw it in. Let's
well,
get.
that was going to be my last question, is that if timing's so important, why don't we just do this? Why don't we just, well, not necessarily the remote you were going to talk about, Steve, but of course, there's all these new things where they dispatch treats, they do this, they do that, the other thing. Why not just, what's the difference? What's the difference between a person giving that dog a treat and a machine doing it? Does the person have to do it, or can it be something else that does it for the timing?
Don't you want the dog to look at the handler, not the machine?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's important. But
I think it goes back to what Jeff was talking about the communication.
it's right.
Yeah.
Relationship.
Mhm.
If you're using a collar, right, there are two forms of usage, right? There's the momentary blast, right, where you're really just trying to stop a behavior,
Mhm.
or there's the, let's say, low stem continuous, which disappears when the behavior is correct, right? So your timing's got to be good, because if you hold the button down too long and you don't take it up when it's supposed to, how does the dog know how to shed the sensation,
Right.
whatever that is, vibrate, stim, whatever you're using? So timing still is important, but it's a question of how, that tool needs that sort of timing, right? Well, it depends on how you use that tool, because there are various usages for using that thing. And then if you have the wrong kind of client, an angry or vindictive client, you certainly don't want them using a tool that could like smoke the dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because these people get mad, and you can't trust them with that kind of tool. Well, just like I can't trust half my clients with a clicker. They just want to click and feed. They get all clicker happy. If they're clicking and feeding, and the dog is getting bigger and bigger, and
Mm-hmm.
not getting smarter. It's just getting fat. So, there are a lot of elements to this, but you happen to pick one that like really an important professional element is timing. No matter what. I mean, just there's a good topic, Joel. I mean, really, because if you don't got it, it's like Jeff says, if it ain't right, it's wrong. That's a good way to put it. I'm not going to forget that.
And
Yeah,
that
and
seems like,
the thing too is that what Steve was talking about too with the human Pez dispensers, as I call them,
mm-hmm.
right? I think and this isn't a criticism, it's just an observation,
Sure.
especially in this force-free era that we're in the middle of. People are so consumed with positive reinforcement, they are not taking into consideration the behavior versus the dog's state of mind when they're
Mm-hmm.
rewarding the behavior.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is we're getting a lot of overstimulated dogs
Mm.
because they might be sitting, right?
Mhm.
But they're sitting like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yes,
Tense.
oh my God, I know mommy and daddy are gonna give me it. Like, that's not the kind of sit I want. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want an alert, attentive sit.
Right.
I don't want a neurotic sit.
Right.
So understanding levels of reward. Seriously, that's what I call it, the neurotic sit.
Yeah, sure.
I know I can't. I mean, I'm a trainer. I have dogs. I know
Oh,
dogs
yeah.
and I say this all the time. There's dogs that know better obedience than my dogs, but my dogs are more obedient.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get preoccupied with sit down, come stay, and marking those behaviors with all this positive stuff. And especially when we're trying to get a longer sit or a longer down or a longer stay, when the dog is learning, they tend to get frustrated when they don't
Yeah.
really understand, when we're implementing time, distance, and distraction. We all have experienced that. They get frustrated. It's normal.
Right.
It's not abnormal for a dog to experience that. But then they're getting this build up, and then they get past that threshold, and where they're just, again, the neurotic sit, and then they're getting rewarded. And granted, the behavior is there, but their state of mind is also getting rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's gotten lost in this whole force-free hoopla, that we always have to be thinking state of minds. I'd rather have a dog with a really good state of mind all the time than a dog that doesn't know 87 obedience commands.
Good point.
And that seems like a good place to leave this. I think what I came out of it with is that, of course, timing is very important. And of course, that communication with the timing is probably even more important. So with that, trainers, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.